Shabbat Shalom, my friends. We leave our bedroom windows open at night because by doing so we invite the constantly changing sounds of the Pacific into our dreams. But the last several weeks, those open windows also remind us every morning around 5 o'clock that the bird song of spring has returned. Of course, that bird song also serves to invite our cat to bound into our room. I don't think that for Shelley, the aesthetics of the scene are really what interests her. But the pre-dawn remains forever magical for the three of us. Our Sedra is Mishpatim, Exodus chapter 21, beginning with verse 1 and following. Mishpatim means ordinances or rules. So we find 53 mitzvot in this one Sedra, 23 positive, 30 negative. Sort of, we notice the catalog building toward 613 is really spurting forward. The set of the Aseret HaDibrot, the 10 statements that we read last week, would never have been enough to fully define the nature of the covenant between God and the Jewish people. But then neither would all 613 mitzvot, the Taryag mitzvot, they wouldn't suffice. But then neither would the thousands of rabbinic laws, part of what we call the oral law, they wouldn't suffice either. But then neither would the tens of thousands of rabbinic responsa composed later into the current day throughout the ages wouldn't suffice. Our Sedra is telling us that in the pursuit of holiness, in the effort to find a suitable pathway to our finest selves, what we know today will never be enough for tomorrow. What we know today will never be enough for tomorrow. There must always be more. The magnificent teachings of Aviva Zornberg on each of the 5 books of the Torah are universally celebrated. But her work on the book of Exodus, in particular, takes us to levels of understanding that are deep, transformative, even transcendent. If you can access her book on Exodus, The Particulars of Rapture, you will be greatly rewarded. Okay, the chronology of Revelation is not straightforward. What is straightforward? In fact, the rabbis would later teach Ein Mukdam U'Meuchar BaTorah. The writings of the Torah are not to be expected to flow in a strict and binding chronological order. It ain't that way. One can read of the revelation at Sinai in chapter 2 of Exodus. But there are many hints and allusions in the text that could lead us to believe that what was revealed in chapter 21 this week actually preceded the 10 Commandments in chapter 20. And when the celebrating of the golden calf occurs, where that actually takes place is controversial. But through faith, Pilpul, rabbinic, Pilpul and Midrash, we muddle forward anyway. And we muddle forward quite successfully, I might add. An important footnote here. Nahum Sarna, quoted by Zornberg, draws our attention to something that I have never thought about nor even tried to understand before. Here in our Sedra, when the Israelites agreed to the details of the covenant that have so far been revealed to them, They say, we know the phrase, Na'aseh v'nishma. We will do and we will hearken. We'll learn as it goes. As it turns out, this well-known phrase, Na'aseh v'nishma, is the people's last act of participation in the covenant. Nowhere else in the Torah will the people sign on to the additional revelations brought forward by Moses. Based upon their experiences in Egypt, at the Reed Sea, at Mount Sinai, and based upon earlier mitzvot that are given in the book of Genesis and which therefore precede Sinai, our ancestors, in an act of incredible faith, chose to trust the word and the reality of God. Zornberg then points out, forgive me, loved it, I learned, that what is occurring in our Sedra is not the usual Middle East ratification of a vassal treaty with all of the T's crossed and the I's dotted. Having learned what they have learned, having seen what they have seen, having felt what they have felt, the Israelites were committed to a relationship far more precious than mere obedience. The new era begins before Sinai. And therefore, that new era continues into our own day. So now, because of what Zornberg and Sinai had to say, I have a much deeper understanding of that phrase used in the Shabbat morning liturgy that says, Az Sinai, ever since Sinai. That's where we, 21st century Jews, that's where we are. That is the name of our era. We live in ever since Sinai. Ever since Sinai, we have chosen as a people to engage with the future. But wait a second. It's such a good thing. Really such a good thing? If someone promised you great treasures and asked only that you give them a blank check in advance, would this be celebrated as reasonable behavior? I don't think so. It's the kind of rash act that gets the elderly put under some forms of supervision. In the old days, we used to speak about, well, how do you check out a used car? You check out a used car that's for sale by kicking the tires. Not a very high level of inspection, but I guess it was better than nothing. In the 19th century, farmers would try to sell their goods to the unwary in a sack, which they called a poke. And the purchaser was therefore asked to buy a pig in a poke without any inspection. I guess the naive and overly trusting would get exactly what they deserved. But I can't imagine any human transaction today that would be carried out in the manner in which the Israelites acted at Sinai. We will do and we will hearken. Na'aseh v'nishma. Really? This was something very different. This was something unprecedented. The people weren't buying tires or investing in tulips here. They were embracing a total change of culture, and a total change of culture demands great things from us. think about our world, 2023. Now, I don't want to depress you. Shabbat, okay. But for a moment, just think about our world. Don't think of it as a spreadsheet, carefully listing all the things that we believe must be changed. Each of us can draw up some really impressive lists. But cultural change will never be found in pulling a few things from a list and working on them. Such an activity can give the impression of progressive change, but it isn't that way at all. It's a band-aid. It's a finger in the dike. It's palliative care without paying any attention to the underlying disease. To begin the new era, the Israelites identified and claimed a moral and ethical vision, and they pledged their lives to the vision, not to the individual details. They embraced risk. They were willing to be scorned. They decided that it was not good enough any longer to be called the no longers. No longer slaves, no longer polytheists, no longer concerned just with themselves. So I wonder, can we do the same in our world? Can we embrace a vision even without all of the particulars and pledge our lives to achieving it? Or are we going to be those who will be condemned to keep on kicking the tires, or, God forbid, buying a pig and a poke? Have a wonderful Shabbat. See you next week. Keep listening to the waves and to the bird song. Shabbat Shalom.